Over a year ago, we began working on our first large-scale indie game. Our plan, initially, was to work out the basic game mechanics at the beginning, which would serve as the basis for the entire game. We knew we would have to tweak some parts of the game. Every game goes through plenty of iterations, but we expected that at least the basic systems would stay intact. We may have been a little mistaken.
Because we are making a 2D platformer, there are a few systems inherent to the genre. Running, jumping, and being killed by obstacles are all part of the platformer experience. To quickly summarize, our game is made up of two core areas, combat and platforming. Our game's main mechanic is being able to slow down time to aim a dash towards targets on the screen. The dash can be used in both platforming and combat to maneuver around our levels and close the distance between you and the enemies. You are also able to slash in 4 directions to attack enemies directly.
Relatively early in development, only about 5 months into making the game, we ran into an issue. We were about to start our first round of level design, but we were unsatisfied with the combat in our game. We decided to hold some playtesting sessions with our friends, and we learned one important thing: to follow the fun. Although this might seem obvious at first, it was something that we had to learn through trial and error. In our testing sessions, the consensus among all of our players was that the combat broke the flow of the game. On the other hand, zooming across the platforming levels at record pace seemed to be the most enjoyable part of the game for our testers. We pinpointed the problem down to flaws with our dash mechanic. Originally, when a player dashed to an enemy, they would bounce off of it upwards so they could attack it downwards with a slash. This sudden change in momentum both broke the flow of the game and confused players because it restricted their movement in the air. Now here's the key point. We were too attached to our original vision of what the game should be, and we let this get in the way of fun and accessibility, assuming that they just need to get used to the controls. The core part of a game's gameplay is its mechanics, and if the mechanics aren't fun and the players don't understand how to use them, the developers have failed at their jobs. After realizing this, we decided to change our design in favor of the accessibility, piercing through enemy targets. This made it much easier to position yourself close to the enemy so that you could hit it with your melee attack, making combat flow much better. With that, we had solved every problem with the game, and wouldn't ever have to rework it again.
One of the most important things we learned over the next year was that as you add more to a game, it becomes harder and harder to change things. Now, you might go, indie game guys who still haven't introduced themselves despite being halfway through the video, that seems a little obvious, doesn't it? And my response to that is, we were young and naive and it was an accident, okay, I'm sorry. By May, when we released the last update, we felt that something was fundamentally wrong with the game. However, when we actually decided to sit down and try to pinpoint the problem, which we had learned to do with the combat system, we realized that there were no easy fixes. Our first instinct was to try to address the most surface level problem, that you couldn't see where you were going. We knew the camera was too zoomed in, but fixing this would require redoing all of the art and all of the levels we had painstakingly designed. So instead, we spent a month making subtle changes so the camera moved slightly in the direction you were going. But during that entire month, we were aware of one crucial fact, that this wouldn't fix the main issue. But with the only other option being about 6 months of redundant work, what could we really do?
At the end of a long day of work, we sat down to talk. We had finally finished grinding through our subtle camera changes and had no choice but to confront the real issue. During this talk, I made the remark that at least we have all the time we want to work over the summer. And then it hit us. We were out of time. When we looked at our packed schedules, the 6 months of work turned into a year, and we were like, uh-oh. That amount of effort for so little payoff did not feel worth it. So we started thinking outside the box. For an hour, we spitballed ridiculous ideas at each other, and we finally landed on one. What if we just gave you infinite tries in each room? For a few seconds we dismissed it just like the other ones, but after some consideration, we realized that our game was almost perfectly designed for this idea, as our levels were designed with trial and error in mind. Thinking outside the box made us realize that the root problem was actually the panic that the players felt, not the visibility as we had originally thought. Removing the stakes of being sent back fixed almost every problem we had with the game's fairness. We could finally make the game difficult without making it overly frustrating. It made teaching mechanics easier, since it meant we could make the player die on spikes without worrying that they would get sent back 10 rooms. By considering ideas that we originally disregarded as unusable, we were able to find a better solution to the problem.
So that's how we reworked our indie game, not once, but twice. This is actually our 8th devlog, but it's the first one we formatted in this way. If you're new here and want to see how our game has come along, check out our first 7 devlogs. If you're returning and want to know what we've changed, check out the patch notes in our Discord server or play the game for yourself. Both of those links are down in the description. Thanks for watching.